to another episode of the Everyday Performance Podcast. I'm Aaron Patterson, he's Mitch Gill, and today we have a really exciting topic to talk to you guys about. Hopefully, we always ask for your feedback, but maybe you'll end up with even more questions about this that we can answer and help you out with, whether that's through our direct message or maybe we even do a follow-up episode of this. But I think you're really going to enjoy this topic, something that everyone can kind of jump onto and pull something from. But it's been a little bit since I talked to you, Mitch. How have things been? What have you been up to? And how's your summer going so far?
Yeah, things are good. This past Memorial Day weekend, we went down to the beach. There was some excitement. I don't know if you saw on our social media, but we had when you have three kids, it's hard to keep track of all of them.
And I don't think I heard this story. Maybe
we had one go missing, which
oh wow.
Yeah, luckily she was on the beach. She just kept walking down the beach searching for shells, and we just happened to be looking away talking. We had visiting with some friends, and luckily it all came out all right. But that was something that when we get into our topic would definitely disturb our topic today. But yeah, we've had that. I've gotten back. I've got the week off. GHSA is on a dead week, so kind of just hanging out. Next week we start rolling with summer workouts. Wow. So yeah, it's here's summer training, and it's full into it. So yeah, but how about you?
Not too bad. Maybe not as exciting as what your weekend or week has been. Definitely sounds like you had a lot more going on there, but schedule's been a little crazy. These past couple weeks, I've been going through a little bit of a transition of going from my school time schedule into my summer schedule. Pretty interesting there. My schedule, we talked a little bit before, like my schedule essentially flips. So usually busy, in the morning, have a little bit of break in the middle of the day, and then I'm packed with athletes after school time. Well, they're not in school anymore, so they want to come in the morning and during the day. So some pretty long days so far. I think today might have been my busiest day so far. Getting started early, and altogether it was probably, it was about a 10-hour day, 10-hour work day. So definitely my busiest so far this summer, but really excited about it. Have even more athletes coming out, which is exciting. I think, some athletes, especially in private sector, might take a little bit of a break just because their sports schedules get busy and all that. But I think I ended the spring semester with I had a little over 20 athletes coming in consistently, and I'm up to 37 athletes coming in consistently now. So some of those are in groups, so it kind of balances out. But still a busy time, especially with all that programming and everything that I have to do. But
yeah, we're in the same boat. My schedule, I go from being more in the afternoon when school's out, it's kind of like you, to now a lot of the coaches, they want to get it done in the morning, get in, get out, and then enjoy the rest of their day. So it definitely takes you from, your thought process of how your day starts. For me, starts a little bit slower when I'm, during the school day or during the school year, but you get in the summer and it's like, boom, wake up. All right, it's time to go, So there's a little bit of a shift in that. And it starts to, when you're used to 10 out of the year being one way and then 2 months out of the year being another, it kind of throws you for a loop. And by the time summer's over, it sounds weird, but I'm kind of ready to get back to the normal schedule, and so but for right now it's I haven't gotten into it, but it's gonna be a lot of exciting stuff moving on to the new school. So but it's gonna be, it's always different in the summer for both of us, it sounds like.
I'm kind of the same way, like you mentioned. I think I get a little tired of the schedule during the school year, later nights and everything. I'm really looking forward to my summer schedule. And then by the end of the summer, it just gets so exhausting. Just that constant, I think just because I'm used to more, I guess, breaks in the middle of the day, and then I'm just blocked altogether. So yeah, by the end of the summer, I'm ready to get back into that school schedule a little more. So yeah,
so let's go ahead and get into our subject, because I think it's something that is because of our schedules flipping, it can affect we're going to talk about sleep today.
Right.
And I think for me, it's one of the first things that I like to harp on with my athletes, especially that group that we have. But I think it's something that goes across the board, not just youth athletes, it's adults. I mean, me as a 36-year-old with 3 kids, you know, sleep kind of gets disrupted or it gets pushed to the back burner for whatever reasons it is. But hopefully today we can give you some idea of why it's important, why to make it, you know, why to make it a priority, and then maybe how to help you, you know, hopefully, you know, get the sleep you need, give you the information that hopefully like, okay, I need to make this the real deal. Because I do think, and I think Matthew Walker had said in his book, you know, sleep is the greatest sports performance drug or sports enhancing drug, if you want to call it that, that sports doesn't make, you know, a priority. And that, let me, I've got it written down here. So he said, well, I thought I had it written down. There we go. Sleep is the single greatest legal performance enhancing drug that most people are neglecting in sport. And I think that's true, not just in sport, but in life. I think a lot of our health issues are coming from, you know, a lack of sleep, which stems from our culture these days, that go, go, go mentality. So why don't you give me we've talked about this and I think you have some idea. And we talked about a little bit of what sleep does, but why don't you give us the purpose of sleep and what happens to our bodies when we do sleep?
Yeah. So, I mean, the purpose of sleep is obviously for recovery, to give our bodies a chance to rest. And I think we've talked a little bit about this before where, or maybe we haven't, but it's an important point where we train hard and we work hard all the time and we think our gains are coming while we're training, but it's actually when we're recovering. And I think the biggest, I guess you could say performance gains, muscle gains, strength gains actually happen at night when you're at rest, when your body is able to recover. So that's really true for your body and your mind. And I guess you could think of it as physical recovery and also psychological recovery, as far as what sleep does for you. But essentially, when you are at rest, when you're sleeping at night, your brain is actually recovering. So your brain essentially goes through kind of a wash cycle, if you want to think of it that way. I heard a really smart woman, Dr. Meeta Singh, she works at the Henry Ford Sleep Center. Heard her on a couple of occasions, and she kind of described it as essentially your brain's being power washed at night to kind of get rid of some of the toxins that you might accumulate during the day, and to kind of I guess work as kind of like a reset for your brain to really get you going for the next day. And I think you had a little bit on this too about kind of I guess the impact that wash cycle goes through, or that it has on your body.
You know, you have some when you look at sleep and some of the things, not just on your brain, but you know, in terms of helps with when you go through your day. You've obviously gone through, you know, maybe you're studying for a test or you learned a new skill. You're during sleep, during the different cycles of sleep, and we could probably go on forever. And I'm not smart enough to, you know, have all that written down. But the different cycles of sleep help not only store your memories, but prune them, if you will. So you get learn during the day. So let's say you had a test, or you're studying for a test, and you're studying. And when you go to sleep, your brain then picks and chooses what it needs to hang on to. So basically, it takes your short-term memories and turns them into long-term. And they did some studies about that, where they had somebody who studied a subject for, you know, a couple hours, try to learn a subject. They went and either took a nap or took sleep, you know, for 8 hours, whatever it may be. And then they had somebody else stay awake. And that person was able to recall better after the sleep versus trying to stay awake for it. So I think, you know, we probably did this when we were in college. We studied all night for a test, and it probably hindered our ability once we got into the test. You know, we studied till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you try to wake up at 6, 7 o'clock to maybe get the last little bit of studying in. to hopefully prepare for the test, when probably had you studied, like you were supposed to do leading up to it, but gone to bed at a reasonable time, your performance would probably be better because your recall is going to be better. So they actually showed a 20 to 40% memory retention benefit from sleep versus trying to stay awake for the same amount of time. So, and then also when you look at with our athletes, skill development, you learned a new skill, you've learned a new. So for your athletes that are a lot of tennis players, you learned a new step into a backhand or whatever it is. If you follow up your practice with the proper amount of sleep, that will kind of create the pathways neurologically to help that become more consistent and better each time that you do that. So, sleep is essential after learning something, but as well as before. I mean, if you come into learning a new subject and your brain is not prepared, like you said, they're not power washed, they're not prepared to learn. Then they're just kind of, you see the kid, I see it every day. The kid is glazed over because they stayed up till 2:00 in the morning playing Fortnite or whatever the new game is. They didn't learn anything that day because they weren't prepared. Their brain was not prepared, was not ready to soak up the information. So, in terms of that, I think that's a big piece that I think a lot of people, not only kids, but adults could get from sleep, is that learning part of sleep helps us become smarter, if you will. And it also helps with a lot of, other things. So, what about physically? What have you read? What have you seen in terms of the physical recovery, the health benefits of sleep? What have you seen, or what have you learned in your studies?
Well, something that you said just kind of reminded me, and it goes along with that, where you were talking about the cognitive benefits of getting a good night's sleep. And I was actually thinking about how being sleep deprived will actually affect your brain and affect your decision making. So what happens is your prefrontal cortex, which is involved in the decision making for your brain, that gets impaired. And then so when that gets impaired, then your brain turns on emotional thinking. And when that happens, then you're not as good about making decisions. So when I was listening to one sleep doctor speak on this, she kind of compared it to how alcohol might impair your brain as far as decision making. It's really pretty similar. So you're going to go into more emotional decision making as opposed to making more of the right decisions. So I guess if we relate that to sports performance, that's obviously going to throw off your timing a little bit. It's going to throw off decisions that you might make in a game or a match. So overall, I mean, that just right there speaks to the importance of sleep. I guess we could go into the amount of sleep that you need to get, because one thing, and this goes along with your point here, if I read that if you get less than 8 hours of sleep, so you get, if you get 8 hours of sleep, if you get a full night's sleep, then your decision-making or reaction time is usually about 1/4 of a second. Whereas if you get 6 hours instead of your 8 hours of sleep, then that could double or triple. So you're going to be reacting a lot more slowly than you would otherwise. So what have you heard about that in relation to specifically to performance?
So some of the big numbers, obviously talked about, the big kind of gold standard is 8. And a lot of the studies kind of use either 7, either equal to or less than 7 or 6 hours. And so when it comes to performance, one of the big things that, especially on my side of things, my side of athletics and performance, is injuries. And sleep is, I don't think there's a better prevention method than sleep. A 2014 study showed chronic lack of sleep equal to 1.7 times greater risk of injury when sleeping 7 hours or less. So huge. This was done in especially in a younger population, which is what we deal with. 1.7 times greater risk of injury if you sleep less than 7 hours. So if you are somebody who is terrified of injury, You better be getting your 8 hours, 8 or 9. It's actually an interesting study, as they showed 6 and 7 had this huge spike. It went to 8, and then it was like this weird little tick up. But I think that was probably just some lack of data of people that got actual 9 hours. But yes, 8 to 9 hours can help keep you on the court better than any other training program that you could probably find. It doesn't matter how well you're training. It will come back to haunt you in terms of injury. And then they actually showed if you slept less than 6 hours, the time to exhaustion, it decreased by 10 to 30%. They actually saw a jump height, a decrease in peak strength, a decrease in rate of an increase of rate of lactic acid buildup, and decreased ability to cool yourself, actually. So, if you're an athlete that's outside, football player, tennis player, keeping yourself cool and being able to maintain your body temperature is huge. So, 6 hours could be disastrous for you. Could put you in the hospital just because of heat exhaustion because of dehydration or overheating. So, yeah. And then they go into also some specific increase in specific sports performance. So, Stanford did a study a while back, basically on sleep deprivation and sleep. Like they actually overslept over 8 hours. And those who slept over 8 hours saw a shooting increase on free throws by 9%, and then on 3-pointers by 9.2%. And I'm sure you've seen that one.
Yeah.
And I actually have, let me find it. I've got it here. I didn't want to write it all out. But Matthew Walker in his book, Why We Sleep, a great book if you haven't read it. He talks about, they did a thing on Andre Iguodala.
Okay.
And when he slept more than 8 hours a night, he saw a 12% increase in minutes played, plus 29% increase in points per minute, plus 2% increase in 3-point percentage, and plus 9% increase in free throw percentage. So he's close with Stanford. And then if he was below 8 hours, he saw a 37% increase in turnover. So you just talked about decision making. If your sport takes a lot of decision making, you need to be able to react quickly. Sleep can be big. And they also had a plus 45% increase in fouls committed. So you're looking at huge when you get into sports. If you aren't, if you go into the game sleep deprived, you're doing more harm for your team than good. So you're almost better sitting the game out because according to that, he went from here to way down here in terms of his performance. So interesting stuff there.
Something that comes to mind there, and maybe people listening can relate this a little more, just like the study that you mentioned, Andre Iguodala. I was reading about Roger Federer, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. He had been so consistent in winning majors, and then finally, I think it was 2013, he failed to win any major tournament, and it was the first time that he failed to do that in 15 years. So he'd been pretty consistent over time, and kind of struggled for a couple of years, and a lot of people started to pass that off as he's a pro tennis player, finally into his 30s. He was starting to decline. Then all of a sudden, I think it was 2017. He won Wimbledon, and then the next year he won the Australian Open, and he started to pick back up again. And people started wondering, like, what is this guy doing? He's in his mid-30s, and all of a sudden he's returning to form. And they finally found out that one of the main factors that had been helping him was he started focusing a lot more on his sleep, which helped in his recovery because he'd been getting injured quite a bit. So just all kinds of factors, but leading towards his focus on sleep. And that's how he was able to recover and start winning again. So really good, I guess, real world or upfront example right there on how that can help, aging tennis player. And he wasn't able to keep up with some of the younger tennis players coming up. And that one thing, he started focusing a little more on sleep, and he was able to pick up his pace again. So really important there.
When you're young, you're 20, you can, burn the candle on both ends. But when you hit 30, and then probably in his case, probably around 30, I don't know his full story, but I wonder when these athletes when they have their own kids, And if it happens in season, and that's, you start when you become a parent of a less than 1 year old, sleep, iffy. It's broken. It's not consistent. So I'd be interested to see if they have ever done a study on
that would be an interesting study to see if anyone can actually lay that out and like get some of the top pro athletes and kind of see what their performance is like after having a kid, after having a baby, and see if that declines a little bit. And then when the kids start to get older, if their success picks up a little bit, that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah. So we're talking about, kind of aging athletes, and obviously that's general health comes into that factor. So
right.
There's actually been a lot of, studies done on diabetes, cardiac health, and actually Alzheimer's, which I think comes back to your point of power washing the brain.
Right.
If you're not getting the sleep you need to kind of clear out the junk in your brain, there's this increase in Alzheimer's. And then they show a link to insomnia and high blood pressure and heart disease. Okay. And then also with diabetes, there's an increase in insulin resistance. So basically, you get 6 hours of sleep. Guess what? You're like a pre-diabetic the next day. I don't know if it's extreme, but it's pretty close. Your blood sugars are going up. You're not able to control. Then they actually show, it messes with your hormones. So you have ghrelin and leptin, which are two that control hunger and fullness. Sleeping for 7 hours or less makes it harder to control cravings and feel full. So leptin, which increases your appetite, goes up by 28%.
Wow.
Leptin, which increases fullness. So they kind of counteract each other. Leptin was decreased by 18%. So you imagine you feel less full and your appetite's way up here. Add on to the fact that you then crave sugary refined carbs. So you increase your total caloric consumption. Well, guess what? Now you know why you've put on an extra 30 pounds.
Right.
You weren't sleeping. So sleep has a huge effect on just your daily life health, beyond just your athletic performance, especially if you're a general pop. So yeah, have you seen anything else there with your gym pop clients there?
A little bit, but what that kind of made me think of was when we don't get enough sleep, then, and this goes into the whole dietary factor and putting on weight, is that a lot of times what we end up leaning on is caffeine to kind of get us going again. And we have a lot that we could talk about on caffeine, but initially that made me think of that because when you intake caffeine, your cortisol levels are going to go up, which throws off a whole host of other things. And usually when your cortisol levels stay high chronically, then that's going to add to a little bit of weight gain too. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and talk about that, about caffeine intake and how that really affects you, because I think that is kind of a go-to. We think if we're sleep deprived, then that caffeine will help us get a little bit of a boost. A lot of things that I've read that actually state that caffeine doesn't really work the way that we think it does. So caffeine doesn't necessarily make us alert. And I'll try to put this in simple terms. It essentially turns off the aspects of our brain that make us tired.
I believe what I read is it blocks the receptors.
Yeah.
That create that fatigue as we go through the day, that kind of sleep. It kind of prolongs it to later. It doesn't really, like you say, it doesn't really create this extra energy. It just kind of blocks what's going on. And then once that's off, that's why you often see that crash of people, you're just kind of delaying the inevitable. When if you which I can't talk about caffeine a lot because I'm bad at probably severely addicted, but it's that, definitely is huge. And then you think about the fact that it affects your sleep later that night.
Yep.
I tell my, clients and athletes and the like that try to limit your caffeine after like lunchtime. Like don't do anything. because if you drink that Red Bull at 4 o'clock or whatever, whenever it is, that half-life of that caffeine drink is only 3 or 4 hours. So you still have half of that drink in your system when you go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then one, you can't go to sleep. You're like this in your bed, or two, you're waking up an hour into sleep. Or you're tossing and turning. That was a big thing I saw when I would limit the caffeine is I use an Oura ring, and I saw better sleep numbers, especially early on. I was able to get into my sleep and not toss and turn as much, according to the ring. I don't know how accurate it is, but I saw some differences there. and so I really try to limit it outside of a few exceptions. As to when I don't have caffeine after lunch. Usually I try to caffeine free something, whatever it is. And I think that would help a lot of people. I see too many kids drinking Red Bull at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they wonder why they can't go to bed till 2 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest factors. I think if they're having trouble sleeping, if they limited their caffeine intake, they'd probably see an immediate increase in their sleep quality.
I completely agree. And that's important. I like that you mentioned the half-life of the caffeine, because a lot of people don't think about how that's going to affect them later on in the evening if they have caffeine, regardless of the type, at, like you said, say 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4. I think a lot of people, if we're talking about Gen Pops, I mean, you might start to crash, especially if you have a desk job. You might start to feel that maybe 2, 3 o'clock. So, I mean, if you're drinking caffeine at 3, 4 o'clock, I mean, that's still going to affect you about the time that you're trying to go to sleep. So it's really kind of counterproductive when we're talking about sleep, the amount of sleep that you get, sleep quality that you need in order to feel refreshed the next day. And going back to that whole power washing of the brain, if you're not able to get into deep sleep, then you're not going to get the full benefits of that. And you're not going to get rid of those toxins the same way. So we're talking about caffeine affecting you and not allowing you to get the sleep that you need. I think it's really important to mention then what to do if you aren't able to get to sleep at night. I've heard a lot about this, and I think it's important. Everything that I've read, and I've done it myself. If you are not able to get to sleep tonight, the best possible thing you could do is actually get up, get out of bed. Because I think we should associate the bed and bedroom with sleeping and not laying awake in bed, because then our body gets used to that and thinking, even though I'm laying in bed right now, it doesn't matter. I don't need to go to sleep, because you'll get used to that. I think one of the mistakes that people end up making, though, when they do get out of bed and try to be productive and do something else, maybe to try to get tired, is the first thing they'll go to. They'll turn on the computer, they'll look at their phone, and that's actually even worse, because by looking at any backlit device, that's actually going to delay your ability to get to sleep even more. So if you're up late at night, say whatever it is, 11, midnight, and you're staring at your phone, that's actually reducing your body's ability to produce melatonin, which then is also going to help you get to sleep. So what all have you heard on that side?
So one of the things that I purchased, or actually I got it for Christmas, I think, was some blue light blockers.
Oh, nice.
I use them like I need to, but I part of that is I don't necessarily have my computer. Like, I'm not up late on my computer, but if you're somebody who has to work late, and you're on your computer, you got, some kind of project, getting something like that. And they're either, some of them are just like regular glasses, or like mine are the old clip on, like you kind of clip them on, onto your have. And a lot of them are orange, but it'll help to block that blue light, which is what is causing your, like you said, your nervous system to think it's daytime. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting there staring at your phone, your iPad, your computer, the TV, whatever it is, and it's bright and it's beating into your eyes. That's tricking your body into thinking it's time to get up. Mm-hmm. So not only that, blue lights, obviously, if you can figure out some way to turn off your electronics an hour before bed, obviously, always plausible. I've noticed that when I wake up in the middle of the night, if I look at my phone at all, or if I have to turn the light on to go to the bathroom for some reason, it's so hard to get back to sleep. Whereas if I keep the light off, if I use my flashlight to get around and keep everything dark,
right,
I'm able to go right back to sleep. But if I sit there and stare at my phone, it feels like forever before I can get back to sleep. So
right.
I think preparing yourself for bed, creating a routine can be one of the best ways to help increase that pressure that we talked about. From when you wake up, you're at this point, and then as you get throughout the day, you're getting here until you're, finally in your bed. Well, if you can create that rhythm, and that your body works in rhythms, if you can create that process of going to bed. So maybe it might be taking a shower, and they've shown that one, taking a warm shower before bed, turning your phones off. Maybe it's having a warm glass of something to kind of help, kind of bring you down. And then making sure your bedroom the environment is good in there.
Right.
One of the first things in any house that we have ever bought or moved into that my wife has done is put blackout curtains on the windows.
Yeah.
Because she can't sleep if there's a light in the room. Like, there's a light on our TV and it's covered. Little red light, and she has a book or puts a piece of tape on it, whatever it is.
Pretty hardcore about it. Yeah.
Well, it feels like, I think some of it, she's like, even if her eyes are closed, she feels like she still sees it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If there's any little bit of light. So I think that's getting your body trained to that. Making sure the temperature is correct. If it's too hot, that's the biggest issue. A lot of people's bedrooms are too hot. You got to have it cold, like cooler, not so cold that you're freezing, but being in that 64 to 68 range has been shown to increase sleep.
Yeah.
When we were these cavemen, we went to bed. It was dark. It was cool. Our bodies learned to shut down. It cooled our bodies, and it allowed us to sleep better and more intensely. We've gotten to the point now in the way our culture is, everything's, air conditioned, and there's lights all over the place. So we're not on our circadian rhythm hasn't caught up, if you will, to our lifestyle. And so we have to be cognizant of taking care of the things we need to help us sleep. I know another thing, and I'm real bad about it right now because I've got one sitting next to me, is that alcohol before bed can be a bit disruptor. So a lot of people use it to help kind of sedate, and that's the problem, is it's sedating. It's not allowing you to sleep. It's just like a fake sleep. My wife just walked out. And so making sure to limit that, because that can disrupt your sleep, making you think you're going to sleep, but then you wake up 3 hours later and then you're wide awake. And that's happened to me before after a couple of drinks. You think it's helping you get to sleep, but it also is disrupting your sleep. So limiting alcohol, limiting caffeine, limiting large meals right before bed.
Yeah.
Because digestion will disrupt your sleep. So, maybe a small snack, but no like heavy, greasy, anything cause indigestion, those kinds of things.
I think that's interesting. You mentioned, I guess, sleep habits of cavemen. And I actually heard that described at one point, where our bedrooms should feel like a cool, dark cave. I don't know how many people actually want to make a habit of sleeping in a cave. But to your point, I think that's important. Make sure that your bedroom's at a cool temperature. Like you said, if it's too warm, then probably not going to be able to get to sleep. And you mentioned the blackout curtains. I think that's an important factor for, I guess, maybe if we have athletes that travel for different tournaments, or our Gen Pop clients that, travel for work, travel over there, get used to staying in hotels. Blackout curtains are so important. And in relation to that, I think it's important too, to, if you can, try to keep a regular sleep schedule from night to night. So if you're changing time zones, it might be difficult just because, say, you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's going to be a couple hours earlier, but especially if you have an important meeting or something the next day, try to stay on that same sleep schedule. Probably Same for pro athletes. I mean, they want to perform at the highest level. So it's maybe even more important for them to stay on that sleep schedule. You know, everyone's probably going out at night before a game or something, but you still need to get to bed early and stay on that same sleep schedule so that you can perform the next day.
Yeah, I think one of the big mistakes a lot of people make, not just athletes, but us as well, as we try to, it's like we're trying to sleep in on the weekend. We're trying to catch up.
Yep.
When really you'd probably be better off. So let's say my normal wake up time is 5:30, 6 o'clock to work out. I try to get up before the kids too, if I'm not working out that day. And then on the weekends, I shouldn't be trying to sleep until 9 o'clock. My kids don't allow it, so that's part of it. But a lot of what I see with athletes is they'll get up all week, going to school, and then on Saturday and Sunday, they're sleeping in until 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Well, then when it rolls around, they're so messed up. They've already messed up their schedule again. Monday, when at 6 o'clock, they're not used to it again. So they're spending that rest of that week catching back up in terms of getting themselves back on that schedule. So I think wake up time, keeping that consistent is huge. Getting to sleep at the same time is big. Obviously that can, depend on what's going on in your life. Mm-hmm. I have that when we get into football season, it's really hard for me. On Friday, we get home at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock sometimes. So you get thrown off, but I try to keep my wake up time is usually no more than an hour different than what I normally do during the week. Because then I'm struggling during the week again. So I think keeping yourself on a same wake up time and a same reasonable, within reason, bedtime can help. It'll create that schedule for your body, and it'll help create that, again, that pressure once you go to lay down. And then once you hit your bed, you're ready to go. You close your eyes and you're off to sleep real fast. So, yeah, I think you're totally right on the schedule part.
Right. You mentioned kind of that sleep debt and trying to recover on the weekend. A lot of parents might not want to hear this, but especially high school athletes or high school students in general do actually need more sleep than a lot of other people. And I know it's actually recommended, instead of that 8 hours, that high school age students actually need closer to 10 hours of sleep per night. I know not a lot of them probably get that. But so yeah, parents, your kids aren't being lazy. They actually require that much sleep. But to that point, we're talking about sleep debt and trying to recover on the weekend. If you're trying to get 10 hours of sleep per night, and what's that, 70 hours per week of sleep roughly. So if you're not getting that, sleeping in and trying to recover on the weekend isn't really recovering that sleep debt. It's just not the same type of sleep. And like you said, your schedules are going to get thrown off. So it really is important to try to keep those schedules consistent. Yeah.
And the damage has already been done. You're not going to catch up. You've already had 3 or 4 days where, hormonally you're a mess. Mm-hmm. You've had practice and workouts and, you didn't get to sleep. So, your growth hormone, your testosterone, all the things that help you recover and feel better, and have been so depressed. Well, guess what? Now you've got high inflammation. Mm-hmm. Next thing, you've got an overuse injury, and it doesn't matter if you catch up on the weekend or not. That you've already started the cascade of effects of, sleep deprivation. So try to get it daily versus, I'm going to catch up on the weekends. Mm-hmm. When parents tell you, catch up on your sleep now, but it's like, no, you suffer through it. Like, it doesn't, getting used to whatever, it doesn't work like that. Try to get your sleep, try to be as healthy as possible, day to day. And don't try make this a priority, because it can be life or death. It can lead to, like I said, increased diabetes risk, cardiac health, high blood pressure. I mean, I had a friend that her dad would work. He'd get up, go to work 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd go to work, get home at 11 o'clock, fall in the bed, wake back up at 4 o'clock. I mean, he did that a lot, and it eventually caught up to him. And I think the doctor finally looked at him and said, if you don't start getting sleep, you're going to kill you. It's going to kill you. Yeah. Like, you're kill yourself by sleep deprivation. And I think he finally stepped away from his job because that was what was causing so much of it. So,
and that's crazy. Something that, I mean, a lot of people probably joke about, but it's true. It's it's a reality. So I think it's also important, if we're talking about this, we're in a society, we're in a culture where we're told you have to grind, you have to work nonstop. When really, and we talked about this probably closer to the beginning, where you're not going to be as productive anyways if you're sleep deprived. So it's important to get that sleep. But I think a lot of people feel like they're viewed as kind of weak or not as productive or not as successful if they're taking that time to recover and time to sleep as much as they need every night. So
that whole I'll sleep when I die.
Right.
Buddy. And guess what? Death will be coming a lot sooner than you think if you aren't. And I think, like you said, I'd much rather get the 3 or 4 hours of sleep that and be more productive. Like you said, you probably get more done in the 8 hours you're at work versus the guy who sleeps and then works all night. He sleeps 4 hours and works all night. Like, what's he really getting done? He's probably placed mentally. He's probably dealing with depression. He's probably dealing with, a lot of other things, health issues that are decreasing his work capacity. Whereas if you take care of yourself, it's the old, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is a free medicine that could cure a lot of our problems in the world. If we got the sleep that we needed, we'd probably have a healthier population, especially in America, if we what we're supposed to when it comes time to sleep.
Yeah. So one thing that, just real quick, that I've been telling a lot of my athletes lately, that if someone tells you that they wake up whatever at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, ask what time they're going to bed. Because if they're not getting the sleep that they need, then they're probably not as successful as they want you to think they are. They're not being as productive. And really, that's also to kind of stress to them the importance of sleep, because they're not going to be at their best if they're not getting rest. So,
yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot.
We definitely covered a lot.
We bounced around a little bit, but this was definitely, there's a lot of pieces to this that I think help not only the athlete but the general pop. So hopefully you got something out of it. If you got any questions about this, any concerns, I think we're going to do some other podcasts in the near future, following up on some of the ideas here.
Definitely a lot more to talk about. Yeah,
I mean, this could have been a lot longer. We probably needed to have somebody that is a lot smarter on it. We try to give you a good overview of the importance of sleep, not only for your health, but if you are somebody where athletic performance or even in your job performance is important, that sleep is pivotal for you. So if you have any questions, or if you got any concerns, or if you need help, maybe getting some guidance, let us know. I think myself and Aaron, if this is a topic for us that we both take pretty hard, heavy. We've done a lot of studying on it. Please reach out to us. Let us know, because like I said earlier, it could, I hate to say it, but it could be our life or death. Maybe not immediate, but yeah, we'd love to help you out any way we can.